Hello and welcome to another review on FSElite. I'm Tom and today we will be taking a look at Verticalsim's Omaha-Eppley Field from Microsoft Flight Simulator. Eppley Field is located in the central United States in Nebraska and is the state's largest airport. It had its beginnings as a humble 1920s park that grew large enough to accommodate planes and soon a hangar, much to some people's displeasure. The airport has seen the likes of United Airlines and Braniff International Airways over the decades and even served as a hub for Midwest Airlines. The airport has 3 runways and sees mostly domestic U.S. traffic from the airlines that currently serve it. Diving into Verticalsim's version of Eppley Field, the airport is said to feature animated passengers in a full-scale terminal interior, PBR texturing, various local landmarks, and correct AI pathfinding. Starting over at the terminal, we find some well-modeled buildings that look like the very same I can see on Google Earth's 3D view and various images online. The PBR textures catch the light as I would hope, and the 2 concourses have very detailed interiors with animated passengers. One thing I noticed here from the few reference images of the interior that I could find is that the gate signage doesn't seem to match up and all are labeled B19. While not a major thing when looking outside in, it would still be one of those small, nicer details to have right. There didn't appear to be any interior modeling for the connecting bridges for the concourses to the central terminal, or on the central terminal itself. I felt these windows could have used a bit more attention to detail with either internal modeling or have some depth added similar to the effect of window shades on the concourses. This effect is much more pronounced at night. The rental car service building did have some light internal modeling, which is appreciated. Back on the outside of the buildings, the textures of the walls are pretty good, though in some areas they feel a tad flat and repetitive. The airport is fairly bland looking in real life, so this may be part of it. The roof textures are also not the best on Concourse A and look like direct satellite imagery, meanwhile the rest of the building's roofs look like custom textures. Some ductwork from the air units are also missing from the roof, but are more of a minor detail, as you don't see them much from the cockpit. Landside, the modeling details continue to be pretty good. There are custom lights and parking garages with plenty of static vehicles on top and inside. The textures on the parking garages do leave more to be desired though, and it is understandable given you don't see this area too well from the cockpit. I did find it interesting that the added cars within the parking garage levels only appear on the faces closest to the air side, with the back side away from the airport completely empty. Personally, I don't mind this, since I'll most likely never look back here in great detail after this review, but some may have an issue with it. There are also custom roadsides leading up to the terminal with various airport decorations around. The main bypass road closest to the airport does have trees lining the center, but these stop in the area near the long-term parking, despite the custom road signs and lights continuing. While we're over here, I appreciate the number of cars that are in the long-term parking lot, though only half of it seemed full, and unfortunately, the ground textures here are pretty poor. With the cars over it, it isn't as bad though. The sunshades, however, do look great. Moving over to the cargo terminals, we see the same nice level of modeling with overall decent texture work. There were a couple spots where buildings were a bit glossier than I would have liked, but overall not bad. A few high-quality static Cessna Caravan models are present, though all have backwards titles on the right side of the tail and the same tail number. Other Clutter objects in the area are well represented, based on images I could find, and at an appropriate density, which was nice to see. Moving on to the GA side of the airport, multiple hangars and FBOs are stationed, as well as a customs office. The series of hangars on the northern side are fairly well done. The doors on some of them don't seem to match the images I can find, and there's a gap in the fence in a couple locations. I couldn't verify the coloration of the smaller GA hangars outside of Google Earth imagery, so the brown color may or may not be accurate depending on when the imagery was taken. Though the labeling of the hangars does appear to be incorrect, as they are all labeled G on one side. The TAC Air hangar and customs building were well modeled and textured. There is an area where there should be a gated fence, but instead there is just a large gap. On the other side, near the signature hangar, there are a few cars that poke through the fence. The signature building, like the previous one, is also well modeled and textured, though the Technic Air logo does have some blue color bleed into the A that shouldn't be there. The remaining buildings over here have a similar quality to the original set of hangars. The clutter objects added around the airport I thought were very well done. They seem to just about match all the real-world locations that I can find in reference images and have nice attention to detail, such as the Southwest colored equipment around their gates. Only the Southwest and Delta gates had signage on their jetways, which is accurate, though only on one side. There is a taxiway intersection that does have a random pillar in the middle of it, and a number of either floating or sunk-in taxiway signs around the airport. The approach lights for some runways also aren't quite lined up with the ground imagery of where they should be. I also noticed that a number of the taxiway signs aren't accurately labeled, and some even show multiple designations for the same taxiway. The ground textures with this airport are very hit or miss for me. In most cases, the appropriate markings are present, and even some faded markings are accurate to their real-world locations. This is particularly true on the runways and gate areas. There is also a nice level of dirt and oil at the gates that some developers seem to leave out completely. In other cases, the alignment of items is off, or the labels are layered incorrectly. For some ramps, there is a noticeable dividing line where the direction of the tiles changed in the real world, and this is present in the scenery. However, the implementation of it leaves a bit more to be desired and is somewhat off-putting. Also, since World Update 10, there's a bit of a blending issue between the airport and surrounding scenery area, but this was not present prior to the update, so I can't fault the dev for not having fixed it yet. Night lighting around the airport is very believable and atmospheric. I like seeing the difference in light temperatures for the different bulbs used, as well as the subtle glow from inside the terminal and the more direct light from other buildings. During snow, the airport gets blanketed with a nice layer of snow. It appears that most ground markings remain visible with the snow, and darker areas have a tendency to not get covered with it as heavily. The touchdown areas on the runway also see a clearing from the tires coming in contact with the pavement. I've yet to see snow done exceptionally well for a scenery in this sim, so I won't hammer too hard here. Away from the airport, a few select points of interest are modeled. The only issue with these I noticed was the backwards text on the TD Ameritrade Park Stadium. Overall, Verticalsim's Omaha-Eppley Field is a fairly decent rendition of the airport. There are a lot of small things that do need fixing, and a number of items that could be improved upon. The modeling of the buildings is well done, and their textures are pretty good. The placement of objects and quality of some textures could be adjusted. As of this review, the airport is available for $17.99 US. To me, is a bit on the higher side considering some other offerings around that price for this platform. The airport certainly has plenty of US domestic routes for several airlines and general aviation that many users may find enticing. What are your thoughts on the airport? Have you purchased it? Let us know down in the comments. We'd like to hear what you think.